Seasons bleatings, everybody! So I'm reviewing a book today that isn't horror, but it's by one of my favourite authors, Adam Millard, and I really enjoy his sense of humour, so I thought I would give this a whirl. And I do believe that this is a new release, and I'll link it in the description. And the reason that I picked up this book, it's a very serious book to me. It deals with some really serious topics and, you know, deep subject matter. It's die lethal. And I guess normally I don't tell you the back cover synopsis because I never actually read them myself, but I really don't know how to explain this book to you, so I'm gonna go with back cover for this one, just this one time. When a new drug is about to hit the LA market, it's up to 2 cops and 1 more cop in a shoehorned in subplot to stop the drugs, take down the bad guys, and try not to get killed or die trying. When Detective John Expendable is killed in the line of duty, Detective Reginald P. Murtaugh is forced to take on a new partner, Marvin Ricks, a suicidal livewire with a list of misdemeanors as long as his mullet. Can they take down the dealers and the huge conglomerate importing this new drug? Will Ricks get the girl who most probably works for the bad guy? Why does Ricks have a slight Australian accent? Is Murtaugh too old for this? Meanwhile, NYPD bald guy, Detective Jim McLeod, if you know, you know, is in town to take down the millionaire businessman who seduced his ex-wife, emptied the McLeod bank accounts, sold his kids to traffickers, and threw his dog Wixie in the canal. Big mistake. McLeod loved the hell out of that dog. Will these plots converge in a clever way? Find out in Die Lethal. And I never do this either, but I am actually going to read the 2 blurbs on the back. Quite simply a masterclass in manically witty and outrageously original storytelling from DLS Reviews, and then from Ginger Nuts of Horror, run by Jim McLeod. If Douglas Adams on amphetamines writing comedy horror remotely appeals, you need Millard in your life. And I have to say, I can't agree more with those blurbs. So, it's finally officially happened, and Adam Millard has broken my brain. Also, I did recently interview him, so I will link that in the description if you're interested, and I hope you are, because he's an interesting fellow. This book is I don't know how to review something this nuts. So clearly it's a parody, a literary parody of, you know, those classic 80s and some later action films. You know, not that the characters on the cover depict anyone in particular here. And I have to say, I always look forward to an Adam Millard book, but this, I didn't bump this right to the top of my list right away because I am not overly familiar with the 80s action genre. The kind of action that I know well is also horror, so I could read circles around a Predator parody all day, but as far as things like Die Hard, Rambo, and Lethal Weapon and stuff, I haven't even seen all of these films at all, and the ones I have seen, I've seen Die Hard, but I mean a couple of times and not for years. I couldn't honestly tell you. It's not really my genre. I did love John Wick, because of how it's shot. You could actually see the fight scenes, and it really doesn't matter how little plot there are. That they knew what they were doing making those films. They knew the audience, and they knew what we wanted, and brilliantly executed. So yeah, as someone who isn't really a fan of this film genre, and also I'm quite unfamiliar, I didn't know how much for me, for my knowledge bank would be missing, and I didn't know how enjoyable this would be because of that. I wondered how many in-jokes there would be that I wouldn't get, and I thought that maybe I would lose a lot of the comedy because of not having a base understanding of all this stuff. However, as it turns out, it really feels like Adam took into account all possible readers when writing this, because while I'm sure that I have missed a lot of film-specific jokes and in-jokes about the genre, I got plenty. It's really hard to put into words what I got. Okay, so it's there are scenes, car chase scenes, where the car is described as, you know, going off-road off a ramp or something and flying through the air, and it's described as flying through the air in slow motion, and it uses all of the action movie tropes, all of the stupid things, or like the things that I say stupid things, things that are only stupid when they're written like this. So in an action movie, if a car flies off a ramp and it's flying through a giant blast of fire through midair, of course they put that in slow motion just to give you the fullest effect of how cool this is and how explosive and action-packed it is. They just, you know, they slow it down for you just for a little minute there. And in an action film, it depends on what it is, I guess. I do find it laughable depending on what it is, like where something that's trying to look really cool rather than it's shot creatively. So I remember watching an episode of The Walking Dead in one of the later seasons where they'd realised that everyone loves Daryl Dixon and that Daryl Dixon is the coolest cast member and coolest character. And there's a scene where he's on his motorbike, he rounds a corner and shoots a barrel, and then it's like a front-on facing shot of him while everything explodes behind him, and he doesn't look back or anything because cool guys don't look at explosions. And I couldn't stop laughing at how horribly forced that was, because the thing this was a misunderstanding about why people loved Daryl and thought he was cool. It was Daryl's coolest moments were really understated things where he did something massive but he did it casually, like, and they hadn't framed it like it was the coolest thing that had ever happened in the show. I think possibly my favourite moment of it was when part of the gang look like they're about to be murdered on the road by a few saviors, and then they just get rocket launched all of a sudden, and then Daryl just appears out from behind the van. You forgot that he even went back there, just with the rocket launcher, and it's nothing much is made of it. That's the coolness of Daryl Dixon. He's constantly swooping in and saving lives and not making a thing of it, and doing it like throwing the grenade in the tank in season 4, things like that. The desperation to frame him as an action hero in this shooting the barrels, fire everywhere motorbike scene, I rolled. Sorry, that was quite a tangent. We're not here to talk about The Walking Dead. Anyway, when you see it in an action film and it's not my genre, but I appreciate it for its merits. It's kind of brain candy, fun popcorn cinema, that kind of stuff to me. And while it's not my particular bag, I do see the appeal of it, and I think that they're definitely are good action films and bad action films and things that are too cheesy and they're not pulled off very well. So I know that this book is parodying like all of the really popular ones, the good ones, but it's so funny to read that a car's going in slow motion. It really highlights how silly all of these individual elements are. and kind of dissects the action genre from what I know of it anyway. I'm sure I did miss a lot of jokes or things went over my head, but it's just so packed full of silliness that it really, I mean, maybe I'd get more out of it if I knew more of these films, but I didn't feel like I was lacking anything at the same time. I wrote down a few favourite quotes because I knew that I was going to struggle beyond reading the synopsis to you to explain what happens in this book, because this is the other thing. See, now this is a reason why I don't like action films, is because the few I've seen, while once again really appreciate them for their merits, for me I find that some action films are a bit overly convoluted, and there's a lot going on in this book, and I honestly don't know, I can't focus my brain on even, I can't even really tell you clearly what the through line is for me, because my memory, and I read this only a week ago, is full of just random scenes. But what I can tell you is that I was extremely amused, and I've taken the liberty of writing a few of my favourite quotes. And I'm sorry that this review is a little bit all over the place and it's not very specific. I have never struggled so much to put into words why I've enjoyed a book so much. It's just Adam makes me laugh, I guess. And so I would like to close out with some quotes for you. It was a woman's voice. Moto knew that because he'd heard one before. I'm looking for Brandt Enterprises, said the man through squinted eyes. There was no reason for the squint, he just looked better with one. This is some dialogue discussing how Rick's wife died. Rick's his wife. And I laughed out loud. I laughed out loud on a whole bunch of places, and me just reading these quotes to you cold now is not going to have the same effect as when it's surrounded by the context of the whole scene and everything in the book, so please bear that in mind. But this one, it was a freak trampoline accident, Rick said. God, it hurt to think about. Neither of us knew it was for outdoor use only. There was nothing on the box. See, now this is the kind of humour that I wish I had. I wish this was my natural inclination, but my brain would never think of sentences like this. There is a very small percentage of people in the world whose brains turn over like this. And this is my favourite quote in the book, and if you look up reviews of this, everyone has got different favourite quotes, so I guess it really depends on what tickles your funny bone most. It's so silly. Rix pinched the bridge of his nose between thumb and forefinger. Hey, Murto said, batting Rick's hand away. Pinch your own damn nose. So in conclusion, so Die Lethal is so if you enjoy so if you're an Adam, just remember the scene in the chicken shop, the date they have. Oh god, there's a bit where he takes this woman posited as a femme fatale out on a date, and then when he takes her home to her apartment, all he's thinking about is how much he wants to press all of the different buzzers and run away, and then decides he'll maybe do that at a less romantic time. Oh god. So in conclusion, if you enjoy Adam Millard or enjoy parody, and I think especially if you love the action genre or hate it, Die Lethal is both exists. It's out in the world and you can get it. Catch up with Rix and Murto. If this is the first video of mine that you're watching and you've never come across Happy Goat Horror before, I really want to assure you that normally I feel like I know what I'm talking about. Just trust me. Boom, 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 boom. Just pretend there's an explosion behind him and he's not looking back. Subscribe, please.